I want to suggest to you today that one way we can profitably think about leadership is to look at these three case studies from history that I've chosen. As you know, they're Alexander the Great, Hannibal, and sorry, it's not Hannibal Lecter, Hannibal the Carthaginian, and Julius Caesar. These are pretty famous names, and they're all well known, and they are great warriors of antiquity, but let me suggest that they have a lot in common and that I didn't choose them at random. However, before going further, I want to make one point clear in the beginning. I don't think these are necessarily good guys, and I don't think these are people who we should emulate. They have, no doubt, some qualities that are good and that we can learn from, but there's also an awful lot about them that's bad, not to mention horrible. I think that they are, as the saying goes, good to think with, and that's why I chose them. Okay, Hannibal, Alexander, and Caesar. Actually, Alexander comes first in the 4th century BC, then Hannibal at the end of the 3rd century BC, and then Caesar in the middle of the 1st century BC. They considered themselves linked in a sense. Alexander set the pattern. Hannibal saw himself very much following in Alexander's footsteps. Caesar was more independent, although the story goes that when he was in his 30s, he saw a statue of Alexander in Spain and wept to think that Alexander had already achieved everything he would at that age, and Caesar had barely begun. So the story is true or not. What is true is the pattern that they all fit. All three of them were great commanders who took a small army, a small professional or quasi-professional army, who attacked an opponent who greatly outnumbered them in resources, in wealth, manpower, in territory that they controlled. In each case, the enemy had a great fleet, and neither Alexander, Hannibal, or Caesar had much of a fleet. And yet, from these somewhat unpromising beginnings, they went on to achieve great things. In the case of Alexander and Caesar, they actually conquered an empire. Alexander conquered the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire in the 4th century BC was the largest empire the world had ever known, without exaggeration, and it stretched about 3,000 miles from one end to the other. Caesar was the governor of the Roman province of Gaul, which he had conquered, rather a large province, but nonetheless not necessarily a springboard for conquering the entire Roman Empire, but that's precisely what Caesar did. He used his position as provincial governor to conquer all of Rome. Hannibal did not achieve his goals as a conqueror. He aimed to defeat Rome to the point where the Romans would reduce their power, recognize Carthage's empire, no longer pose a threat to Carthage. Hannibal failed in that. Rome won the war. But along the way, Hannibal won the greatest battlefield victory in the ancient world, and one of the most famous battlefield victories in all of history. It's the Battle of Cannae, 216 BC, influential for better and for worse. It had a baleful influence on the planners of German strategy and tactics in World War I. And so each of these figures similarly achieves great things from small beginnings, if not precisely the same things. Each of them also exemplifies the connection between war and politics, and the fact that war always has a political dimension. And I say this from a number of different points of view. One point of view is that each of them was a master of politics as well as a master of warfare, and neither of them attempted to do what he did without a great deal of political as well as military skill.